not drinking left, but freedom's a weapon I wield till my death. A father, a keeper, a wolf with a creed, gun smoke and scripture, the tools that I bleed. Barbed wire, rosary choking my throat. Each beat's a reminder your kingdom's a joke. I won't bow to idols of politics flame, but bodies of demons that die in my name. Conservative Satanist, ash in my lungs, break to the fire that burns from my tongue. Darkness, my altar, I carve in the stone. I walk through the void and I stand all alone. Crown of revolvers, my halo of lead. Prophets go silent when vultures are fed. Banner of ashes, I raise it and swear, no tyrant, no preacher will poison my air. Legacy sharpened on edges of sin, carve out a kingdom of marrow and skin. Freedom's my gospel, I bleed it and burn. Every betrayal, the lesson I've learned. Crosses collapse under weight of my will. I don't need salvation, I need to stand still. Conservative Satan is fire in my veins. I baptize in chaos, I'm breaking the chains. Crimson horizon, black iron sky. I'm not here to follow, I'm here to defy. Smoke in the chapel, the scripture is torn. I build what I am from the wreckage of thorns. No crown above me, no leash on my breath. I feast with the devils and dance with my death. Skull full of scripture carved back, bruising flame. Lucifer whispers while I baptize in pain. Eucharist shattered, I'm gnawing on rust. Bone marrow chalice, spit blood, breathe dust. Ritual static, my pulse is a curse. Pentagram, heartbeat inverted in verse. You call it rebellion, I call it my truth. Drag God through the grave while I feast on his proof. Conservative Satanists spit in your face. Don't care if you choke when you gag on my grace. Red in my vision, black smoke in my chest. I die for my values, I'll kill for the rest. Purge with a hatchet, morality rots. Politic puppets get strung up in knots. Family and faith, then you'll cross to defile. I guard what I love with infernal denial. You brand me a traitor for not drinking left, but freedom's a weapon I wield till my death. A father, a keeper, a wolf with a creed. Gun smoke and scripture, the tools that I bleed. Crown of revolvers, my halo of lead. Prophets go silent when vultures are fed. Banner of ashes, I raise it and swear. No tyrant, no preacher will poison my air. Legacy sharpened on edges of sin. Carve out a kingdom of marrow and skin. Freedom's my gospel, I bleed it and burn. Every betrayal, the lesson I've learned. Crosses collapse under weight of my will. I don't need salvation, I need to stand still. Conservative Satanists fight in my veins. I baptize in chaos, I'm breaking the chains. Crimson horizon, black iron sky. I'm not here to follow, I'm here to defy.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Satan and Coffee. This morning is going to be an interesting episode, to say the least. Hopefully a little fun, but interesting, none the least. So, y'all got your coffee ready? And your popcorn? 6:30 in the morning. So today's topic kind of ties into some other stuff that is there hasn't been, like, I don't want to say there's been like back with my God spousing, but there's been enough interesting conversation surrounding it that I think it warrants a mention for some specific reasons. Probably not the reasons some people are thinking. So, first of all, when I speak about my experiences and things that I have learned over my 20 plus years in the occult, when I speak of these things, I only speak of what it is that I have learned. And just because somebody, anyone, disagrees with something doesn't inherently mean that they haven't had conversation with people that have been on the other side of it or haven't seen the other side of it. It's because of those conversations with people on the other side of it and the things that I've witnessed and experienced that I maintain the position that I have on certain things. Morning. And I know inevitably there are going to be people that are going to come out of the woodwork with the God spousing and say, well, it's existed for a very long time. And it's very true. It has. Like, God spousing is not a new concept. It is not a neo-pagan concept. It has been around for hundreds of years, if not thousands. There is one distinct difference, however, between traditional God spousing and what we see cropping up today on like TikTok and Tumblr and things like that. And one thing that a lot of people are not talking about, which is the safety protocols that exist with it. People, at least the people that I have seen that talk about God spousing, use it as a personality identifier and completely ignore the traditions behind it. Like, when we talk about the traditions, right? I mean, it's, there's so much there, right? So I have a few notes, right? So when we talk about this, right? So the shamanic kind of like, or possession traditions, where you do see wives and husbands approached through dream, trance, and ordeal, when bound by ritual rules and inside of a community. I am Lewis. Talked about this on possession economies. And Janice Bodhi on Tsar cults in the Sudan. Then there is Cote d'Ivoire by the Bayul, a Carve Belolo spouse, right? Figures that mediate fertility and luck. They're managed with taboos, social accountability, not vows made on Tumblr. God spousing. It's an old concept, And there's variations of it throughout history. Even Haitian voodoo, marriages to Iwa, right? Are formal ceremonies with priests, witnesses, obligations, even costs, and house rules that define when you can and can't do, or what you can and can't do afterward, right? After it's done. So it's something that's existed for a very long time. But the problem is there's so many people out there will take something that has existed for a very long time, right? And then just roll with it, without any of the precautions that have existed in the past, right? To do these things, right? And so here's the thing. So why does God spousing still exist, right? And this is going to get into the actual meat and topic of today's episode, but I feel like this needed to be addressed at the beginning, so this is kind of like a precursor. This is also the last conversation I'm going to have on this. So, Summer Witch, God spousing is something like, so in modern terms, it's people that believe that they have a romantic relationship or a romantic connection or communion with a spirit, deity, or entity. It's that simple. Like, that's the breakdown of modern God spousing. The versions of it that have existed throughout history are significantly more complex than that, right? And why it's persisted is because it works, right? I'm not going to deny that. Like, in the cultures where it exists, even in Christianity, it exists in Christianity, right? Nuns as brides of Christ or God, right, is symbolic theology of union, not a conjugal claim, right? That replaces human relationships. Though it does limit their ability to have, human interactions. I mean, you can look into the late medieval female piety for that one. And even on the shadow side of that, like medieval writers had grappled with reports of incubus and succubus, right, as moral theological problem, not an aspirational lifestyle goal. It's so they've talked about the issues with that. For some reason, people think it's something to a goal to try to work towards nowadays. But at the end of the day, the reason why it's persisted throughout these cultures, because it does persist to this day, is because it does work, right, on several levels, right? So it gives a grammar to power, pressure and pain, and it stabilizes identity, and helps people to channel charisma and provide a role in a community. Done inside a lineage, you get benefits plus boundaries. Done as a solo performance with no container, you get intensity with no breaks. Right? So benefit requires boundary. And this is the point that I've been trying to make, right? Modern platform discourse on this has become more of a personal version that's deleted the supervision. These are private initiatory frameworks that become public identity markers. And unfortunately, social media algorithms reward maximal claims and punishes nuance. So people keep talking to me about nuance. This is the thing. I'm the one presenting nuance to the conversation. Like, people sitting there telling me that I need to change my views because it doesn't upkeep with people that actually do it. I mean, I've never claimed that people don't do it, or have I claimed people that shouldn't do it. I'm merely presenting the nuance. I am presenting the nuance. Don't get it confused. I am providing nuance to this, because everyone else out there is going to tell you, go for it, do it. If whatever it is you're working with is open to it, then go for it. Without discussing the nuances. You all are missing the nuance, not me. I know that this shit exists. I know that it has existed for a very long time. I'm presenting nuance to this. Nuance that needs to be looked at, that needs to be catered to, that needs to be taken into consideration when you do these things. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just telling you that there's risk involved. That's all I'm saying. And people are getting upset that I'm saying that there's risk involved. I mean, somebody even went as far as saying that my commentary that this is dangerous is dangerous. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. When did warning people of a potential danger of delusional behavior become dangerous? Because it might offend somebody. Like to be completely honest, guys, like I don't know if everyone that watches the show thought I was joking when I've always made these comments that I don't care if I offend you. But I wasn't joking. Like, if I say something that gets blowback, I'm not going to change my position because it gets blowback. That means I'm saying something that tells me that I'm saying something that needs to be said. I'm talking about something that needs to be talked about. If people there are people that come out and try to stop me from saying what it is that I'm saying and making because none of the points that I've made have been opinion based. I mean, there's opinion involved in it, but none of the points that I've made are opinion based. The points that I've made are backed by the traditional grimoires that exist from the Goetia and beyond, encompassed with psychiatric and psychological studies that have happened over years of watching the effects of this stuff on people. And then incorporate that with the experiences that I have had in the sense of that I have seen of what happens to them when this shit inevitably breaks down. And therefore, I thought it necessary to put a warning out there. And everybody loses their shit. And I think it's funny. I do. I think it's funny because I'm not telling people you shouldn't do it. If this is something that you do and it works for you, cool. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to people that haven't done this yet and might be at risk in doing it. And I'm providing a framework where if people still want to do it, even though they are potentially at risk, that they can look a little bit deeper and find the traditional ways that it's been done. And maybe one of those would work for them. Something that has guardrails, something that has the control to it. That is what I'm saying. Shamans. I completely agree with that. And yes, as my wife pointed out, dangerous to the rhetoric is what I think is what people are saying without saying it. So going back to talking about how this works, right? So it does work, right? But when we add in the modern frameworks and how the algorithm rewards people for talking about like the most of their claims and then punishes, for example, people that put out the actual nuance, right? So rituals flatten into like just a vibe, oaths into aesthetics, and taboos into gatekeeping, right? When you tell somebody that they need to be careful about something, now all of a sudden you're gatekeeping. And again, I'm going to reiterate a point here. I believe in what it is that I do. Like, I truly believe in magic. I'm the only person out here that believes in magic enough that I will tell people that if you are not willing, if you had the opportunity to take take a weapon and use that weapon against someone and cause physical damage and not get in trouble, willing to do that, then you shouldn't be hexing or cursing people. Hexes and curses, at least baneful magic to cause harm, is like a loaded gun. That is how much I believe in magic. I don't think that this shit is a game. I don't think that this is something that people just play with, or should be playing with. And for some reason, though, in the occult community, what we constantly talk about is that side of things, like it's a game. We talk about cursing and hexing people, like it's fun. And it has its place, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, I'm what people would consider a black magician. And in that, like, I mean, I work curses for people. Okay, people ask for curses and hexes, and I do it. But I'm still of the mindset that if you're not willing to point a gun at someone and pull the trigger, then you shouldn't be hexing or cursing them. So that is how much I actually believe in this stuff. Right? Now, there are museums, like museum catalogs, that still describe traditional spirit spouse figures as embedded in social discipline. Unfortunately, meanwhile, the DIY space turns spouses into comfort objects with zero cost of entry and zero consequences until there are consequences. And the conversation I'm trying to have is presenting the consequences to these actions and to these behaviors, you know, that people need to see, people need to pay attention to. Right? And I've talked about multiple times where the stuff goes sideways, right? So magically, the older material emphasizes containment, clarity, command, and taboos, right? And people think a taboo is like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. No, that's not what a taboo is. A taboo is, you know, a limitation, something you shouldn't do, but, you know, because it causes, there's consequences for it. Those are not control issues. They're safety protocols, right? And if you remove them and widen the channel for obsession, parasitism, and loss of agency, that's why enthographies harp on social containers and role clarity. It's also why classical grimoires obsess over circles, names, timing, and oaths. Not because, you know, spirits are evil or even demons are evil, but because boundaries keep humans functional and safe. Psychologically, collapsing a god or demon into a parent or lover overlaps with one-sided attachment patterns. Most people won't tip into pathology. No, they won't. But the tail risk is real. Clinical literature flags erotomanic and fixed belief patterns for a reason. Even milder forms can displace real relationships and hollow out support systems. So what does that mean? Good morning, Trinity. Welcome. So what does all that mean? It can feel meaningful while quietly wrecking your life. Feeling good is not the same as being well. And that's the only thing I'm saying. Right? Because I've had conversations with you, Seti. I've had conversations with you. But I feel like there's a little bit more that needs to be added onto it. And it rolls into what I'm going to be talking about here in a couple of seconds. It's not about being open-minded, Seti. Like accepting the potentiality for delusion and inappropriate behavior, harmful behavior to a person, isn't about being closed-minded. And if you would have caught the beginning of the live, which I'm assuming you didn't, I opened this up talking about how much this stuff has existed centuries. It's not a new concept, but the differences between how it was done and how it is being done and why it was done the way that it was done. And that if people are going to get into this, that they should look into how it has been done in the past, in cultures in the past. And because of the people that have come at me, and it's not just you, Seti, there's other people that have left comments as well, I feel like there is a necessity for me to further defend what it is that I'm saying and why I'm saying and why I think the way that I do. Your comment on my necessity to open my mind, I'd like to think that I'm rather open-minded, but because there's one thing that I'm not going to sit there and say, go ahead and just do it, that I think that there's certain things that need to be in place. It sounds like you're the one that's taking this a bit personally. I am the one showing nuance. That's the problem. Now, nuance can either go in favor or against something. I am the one showing nuance. There's so many people out there that just refuse to talk about the details of this. But I did. I went through the whole opening of this was just about how this has existed for hundreds of years in multiple cultures across the world. And the differences between those practices and how these things are being done. Because the thing is nobody talks about the guardrails in this practice. I'm not saying people shouldn't do it. I'm advising caution. Anyway, to that point, I do want to move into today's subject, which is what I actually want to talk about, which is the title, for the title's sake, is The Curse of Too Much, right? So I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I have read, I don't know how many books, talked to I don't know how many people, done ritual in so many different ways, have many anecdotal experiences that are either echoed by other people or sometimes completely contrary to what. One thing that I feel is happening is I feel like we live in an age where everyone has a grimoire and no one has a soul. Right? Information saturation has replaced spiritual hunger. And how the digital age has given everyone access to everything but remove the depth. Right? Because of how people work psychologically, we live in a headline culture, and unfortunately I feel like a lot of that bleeds into the occult. Right? Is that we see the headlines, we see the big print, we see what you know, the overarching ideas, but then we don't dig into it further, right? And this is why I think this ties into the whole God spousing thing. Like I said, God spousing has existed for hundreds of years, if not thousands, all over the world. But there's a lot more to it, culturally speaking, depending on how you're trying to do it, that I think a lot of people haven't looked into. Some probably have, but I think many haven't. And I think that's true with many things in the occult. But what happens is we get into this situation where we find something that's interesting, we read a few paragraphs on it, we don't really dig too far into it, and then we lose the point, essentially, is what we do, right? The internet has turned occultism from like secret fire into searchable content. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, having the information there is great, but like, I don't think there's a problem with having the information available to people. Where I think the problem lies is the fact that people aren't actually reading all of the information. They're not going through everything as deeply as they should be. And then stuff gets confused, gets mixed, gets thrown together into a thing where you kind of sit there and you go, like, wait a minute, like, what is this? Like, what's, you know what I mean? And that's fine. Like, I'm fine with you disagreeing. Like, I've always said that this channel, not just the shows, now Satan and Coffee is definitely more my rant house, right? It's where I talk about what I feel about things that I've investigated as I see them, without apologizing for that point of view. But the channel, myself as a human being, and Apocrypha, obviously, has always been about having discourse, having a disagreement, talking about the sides of things that exist. Because the only way that we are going to learn is by having those conversations. Sometimes those conversations are going to be uncomfortable, either for myself or for the viewers. Right? I will not reduce down to calling people names. I will not reduce down to claiming people to be unintelligent because they disagree with me. I'm merely going to continue, because I don't know if you've noticed this, Seti, but with most of the responses that I've given you, I've parroted and reparroted my points of view each time I've responded to you and why I think the way that I think. The reason for that is because that is my basis. That is my backing in why I think the way that I think. And so when somebody disagrees with me, I will defend my point of view until new information is presented that makes me question what it is that I'm saying, or opens up kind of like a new avenue for seeing something. So there's nothing wrong with disagreement. It's when it comes down to you're wrong, I'm right, that's where the problem lies. Right? Because it's all about having a conversation. It was something that I felt necessary to put a caution sign on, which is why I explained it in the way that I did. I'm not denying that there are people that works for, and they're perfectly fine, and they're happy, and whatever. I don't deny that. But there are aspects of it that I've seen that no one talks about, and that's what I was talking about. There's enough people out there confirming it for other people. I wanted to present the caution sign saying, this is what I've seen. This is what I understand. Over 20 plus years of doing this. So if you're going to do it. Just be cautious or don't be cautious. Do what thou wilt. And let that be the whole of the law. You know, but that's it. Let's just have the conversation, shall we? Like, if the conversation needs to happen, the conversation needs to happen. People are going to disagree. That is part of life. It does not need to reduce down to any personal attacks to anyone. If I want to embody Samael and Lilith in balance, it is about reflecting and internalizing. Yeah, I can agree with that 100%. And I also think that there's a level of confusion because I remember, like, Seti, you had mentioned Divination Witch. I'm unfamiliar with how she works with Hecate, but you know, good morning, Samael. I'm unfamiliar with how he works with Hecate, but I do think I recall her calling her like Mother Hecate, things like that. And I don't think that there's anything actually inherently wrong with that. Like, for example, if you're, say, Father Lucifer or Mother Lilith, like in the sense of reverence, not actually making them like a replacement for your parent. And the thing is this is also another thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about the extremes of it. I'm not saying people shouldn't, you know, like in reverence, you know, use these terms, you know, while in worship, you know, because I mean, fuck's sake, I mean, Christianity, you know, God the Father, right, has, you know, ingrained it in us. And so I'm not telling people that they shouldn't do that. Like, I mean, I'm not talking about like the lighter hearted aspects of it. You know, I'm talking about the dangerous parts of it. Is what I was talking about. But anyway, I will make the point that this is the last time I'm going to discuss this, unless somebody comes to me with an actual conversation, like, and says, hey, you know, I want to talk about this aspect of things. Okay, fine. But like, I feel like the point's getting lost. And I feel like if I keep going down on this, it's going to continue to get lost. So yeah, and that's exactly what I've been talking about. And I mean, if you want to, I'm not going to rehash the whole thing, but if you want to know like my views and why I think the way that I think about things, in the post section on the channel, the last post I did, I think is the best explanation of what I think and why I think that way. Right. And again, I'm talking about extreme examples, right? The extreme side of it. Like, I'm not talking about the middle ground. I'm talking about, you know, the connection between coffee and Satan. I like Satan and I like coffee. There's your connection. So, continuing on with the curse of too much, right? So, the internet's turned occultism from secret fire to searchable content. Again, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think it's how the information is treated is what is the problem. Okay? Knowledge isn't power anymore, it's currency. People use what they know to try to, like, there's this obsession with, you know, the gotcha moment, right? That people want to one up somebody. Like, the amount of comments that I get that is just literal word salad of people throwing a bunch of half-baked concepts together to make themselves sound more intelligent, and only prove that they're not, is disgusting. It's also turned into a currency for likes, followers, shares, you know, and like all of that has become like the new initiation, right? So if you look at, like, for example, you know, witch talk manifestation spells versus traditional ritual magic requiring weeks of purification, focus, and study, right? We've our social media addiction has leaked over into the occult. We don't want in-depth conversation or research or, you know, actually like unveiling certain things. What we want is immediate results. And I don't think that that is, you know, that doesn't really. All right, where are we going with this now? Getting raided by pseudo intellectuals. Yeah, exactly. Getting raided by pseudo intellectuals. So, so what's the paradox here? More resources than ever, less understanding than ever. And that's something that I've been noticing across the board, right? If we look at it, we could talk about, for example, if you look at Crowley's liver, the Libero, versus a modern 5-minute sigil challenge, right? The sacred becomes a novelty, right? It's not that the information is wrong; it's that there's no digestion, right? People don't study anymore. They consume, they gorge on grimoires like junk food, then act surprised when nothing changes inside of them. Crowley's liver, yes. Crowley's liver, because that man probably consumed a ridiculous amount of alcohol. Of that, I'm certain. I tried to think of the state of that, right? So, melting pantheons and melting ideas. So here's the thing: there's nothing. There's nothing inherently wrong with being like believing in like multiple pantheons. I do it myself. There's a lot that I practice that is Norse in nature. But then there's a lot of it that is modern westernized, some of it classic, European, as far as like, the occult's concerned. So I'm definitely a mixture of things. So there's nothing wrong inherently with doing that, but there does become a problem, right, when you don't respect the pantheon. And that's one thing that I kind of notice a lot, is that when people go into this and they start worshiping multiple pantheons, they start blending it all together. We going to smoke Crowley's liver? Liver? Would it kill us? Probably. It would be like, what is that guy's name? Fucking John Belushi, I think, or something like that. The amount of drugs that motherfucker did. When he dies, we'll just smoke his ashes. I actually think Marilyn Manson did that. I think Marilyn Manson did, like, try to take bones and put them into a pipe during the making of Antichrist Superstar. I think that was a thing. I only serve the finest Crowley pate. Oh, wow. I'm glad we still have a sense of humor. So, moving forward, right? So the modern trend of blending every deity into one universal energy, that's one thing I disagree with. I don't think it's 100% incorrect, but I think that it's done not in the best way. Cultists. I think it's more about respect, Seti. I think it's, at least for me, it's about respect. It's about respecting where it comes from. It's not saying that necessarily that, like, mixing shit together isn't wrong where it can apply, but I think it's losing the tradition, right? It's when there's no more respect at all for where the stuff comes from. And it becomes something completely different. And there's not an inherent problem with it becoming something completely different, but there's a reason that our ancestors, they knew what the fuck they were doing. They got the results, right? And it's not to say that we don't get results, but I think there's something to be said that, like, when we look at old, occult traditions, which then wouldn't be considered a cult, like they're just the traditions at the time for the culture. Like if we look at the Celts and the Druids and the Norse, Trinity, you too. Take care. Take care. If we look at all of those things, there's something to be said for the way things were done, right? And the understandings that, our ancestors had with the way that things were done. I think it's just a matter of upholding respect for that and not losing the signal with noise, because there's a difference between noise and signal, right? Even in business, like if you look at business, very successful people in business will talk about the comparison of signal and noise. And so signal is like the concrete things, right? And noise is everything else that happens around you. That's not, noise doesn't inherently mean that it's a bad thing, but it's not pertinent to the goal, right? To the focus. So when we talk in terms of signal and noise, right, there's a lot of noise, but not a lot of signal, right? Not a lot of focus. Yeah, no, exactly. I completely agree with that. And here's the thing. The whole conversation with the God spousing thing, that started on a topic that I think was significantly more important than God spousing. So where that came out of was me doing a live talking about, there's a person I found on TikTok that had actually told someone to fire their therapist. And that he would cure their trauma in one session in one day. And, this is somebody that on TikTok, I think he's got 25,000 followers or something like that. And I know that in terms of like, following count nowadays, like, I mean, that's comparatively not a lot, but it's still enough to cause damage. I believe in mental health professionals, and I believe in the necessity for therapy, and I believe in the necessity for, I just believe in the necessity for these things. And to have someone that considers themselves an occultist telling people to fire their therapist is disgusting to me. And I think that that's the more important conversation, right? I mean, that's where the whole God spousing thing came out of. And I think that, there's been, a loss of signal in that conversation, and it's been confuddled with noise. But that's where that kind of came from, was that part of things. So with what Samael said, yes, it's, when you get people that are using the occult to capitalize and cause harm for their own gain, we run into a major problem. And unfortunately that exists a lot, because a lot of people fall into practices where they believe that they can do things that they can't. And we can't ignore the science, right? We can't ignore it, because psychology is a science. It is natural. It is. The evolution of magic is natural. And maybe there's some truth in what you're saying. Maybe I'm just, an old goat, trying to hold on to old practices, trying to make sure that the old ways, stick around. You see this a lot more in the West than you do in Eastern traditions. Eastern traditions, usually kind of stick to what they know. But even those become, limited, right? Because of that. Like, I think both sides have like pros and cons, right? Know your origin, know your destination. Course. School starts step 3. Dreamer starts with 2. Visionary starts step 1. I like that. That is very well said. So I think that there's pros and cons in everything. And in the way that, things are done. I'm not a big fan of modern Western occultism. Even though, yes, I am a modern Western occultist. But I don't think that I like the direction that apparently going. Everything kind of being just stuck around in smoke, right? So the modern trend of blending every deity into one, universal energy. So online posts equating Lucifer with Prometheus, Enki, and Loki without context or ritual differentiation. I think is part of it. I mean, are there parallels with Lucifer and Prometheus? Definitely. But then to turn around and take those parallels and say that they're the same thing. I mean, I don't know if I would go that far. I don't know if I that far. So, the concept of the sacred and profane, right? How sacred symbols lose power when homogenized. So I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it, Seti. And yeah, I mean, you're probably not wrong at all. Like, I mean, we can only stipulate, right? We can't know for sure, unfortunately, because Christians made sure of that. They burned our shit and, then fed us the Goetia and, the Cliffoth, right? Even though, I mean, yes, I know it's like, you're talking more like Jewish mysticism with the Cliffoth, but you get my point. Correct me if I'm wrong, that is correct. All right, I had to check my encyclopedia. It's laying on the couch. Like how ones can feel offended. You see, I also disagree with that. Like, I disagree with the idea that on exactly how they work. Like that. I disagree with both extremes. Like, I think if we go too far into the noise, we lose everything. Far in the past, we don't grow. And like bringing a Nokia phone to a MacBook convention. I get the reference. I definitely get the reference. That makes sense to me. Ooh. So I don't know where this is I don't know where I made one short. A short on TikTok. And it mentioned the Order 9 Angles one time on a live. And now I am an Order of 9 Angle Satanist. Like, wait a second. Where the fuck did that come from? Okay, so allow me to clear this up, Karma. I am not, nor have I ever been, nor will I ever be an Order of 9 Angle Satanist. I have some documentation that I have read for educational purposes. Now, here's the thing. I understand that the ONA is a decentralized organization. So it's still an organization, but it's decentralized. So there is no obvious hierarchy to it. And that is intentional. That is intentional that they are decentralized because it stops governments from shutting them down, right? People use the idea of decentralized organization to say that it's not an actual organization and it's just like a framework, but that's not true. Like a decentralized organization is still an organization. Anonymous is a decentralized hacker organization, still an organization, but it's decentralized, meaning there is no central command. Right? So it crops up, somebody takes over, gives it direction, task is done, back into the ether. Right? There's no consistent or constant centralized aspect of things. So, yeah. So I have never been, nor will I ever be, an ONA Satanist. Jasmine Ambrosia always states, "Oh, we should listen to her." You would have to tell me what UPG is, Betty, for me to have an opinion on that. Because I don't know who Jasmine is, and I don't know what UPG is. So I'm lost at the context. Anyway, continuing to go forward here. And I'm not a neo-Nazi. Unverified personal gnosis. Ah, okay. Verified person. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. I don't think so. I don't think. Did I have Jasmine on? I mean, I don't know. Did I? I don't think I did. If I did, now I feel really bad. I mean, I've been doing this thing for 5 years, Seti. So in 5 years, there's been a lot of people, and I suffer from ADHD. So, yeah. And severe, like I'm diagnosed with severe combined presenting ADHD. So that's fun. Could be someone else. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Just Dyra's trying to head upstairs and for time. No, you're pregnant. Anyhow, so there's some behind the scenes there for you guys. So continuing on with this, right? So with the sacred and the profane, right? How sacred symbols lose power when homogized, right? So the critique here is if every god is the same god, then none of them are. Right? So this is where I kind of run into an issue where like every god is like both extremes of this, right? So there's two extremes here. So there's one extreme where every single entity is a completely separate entity and not an aspect of another. Like, so for example, where I homogenize this, like I bring things together, is with Lucifer, Satan, and Samael. I look at it as a triptych of the same entity with, it's just a different face of that entity, right? And I've always described this, right? It's, I have 3 different phone numbers. Depending on which phone number you call, you get a different version of me because each phone number is for something else, right? And I will, answer the phone differently. And I look at that very much the same way. Yeah, Seti. Yeah. Dyra's 34, 35 weeks pregnant. I can see that. So I look at, for example, so the Satan conflict, that. So I don't look at in necessarily that my working with Lucifer, Samael, or Satan as I'm working with a different entity, but I'm working with a different aspect of that entity. right? It's for different reasons. Like I work with each one for a different reason, but it's not a separate entity, right? Satan, as we know, is just a title after all, right? Means the adversary. Lucifer is a Roman god if we go back into history. Samael is an angel. So if we really want to be technical with it. So I think that Satan is kind of like the overarching name, but still represents through title a different aspect. And then the two names, Lucifer and Samael, are again different shades of Satan, if that makes sense. And so I don't agree with lumping everything together and everything same God and the same energy and this, that, and the next thing, but I do get what Seti is saying. Like, there's truth to that. There is truth to that, and I don't think I have time to get into that, but there is truth to what Seti just said, that the gods are like a swarm of locusts. They make up one shape, but are each individual. So I can see that. Seti, thank you very much for the £3. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you for the congratulations. Yes, so there will be a little demon baby in the house. Crying and asking for food nonstop. On November 8th. So, another way to kind of get into this, right? So, Jung's archetypes, right? Integration requires individuation, not fusion. You can't summon Hecate, Santa Muerte, and Lilith in the same jar spell and call it in balance. That's not magic. That's spiritual gentrification. Right? That's probably something that I would do. But I know for a fact that Dyra wouldn't let me. See, for a girl, I've always really liked the name Raven. She can't stand it because it's like a typical goth couple name. And I just really like the name Raven, but she will never let me a Raven, so sad. Right? Now, the cult of personality aspect of this, yeah? Right? So the obsession with being a spiritual influencer and not a practitioner. So I suppose I suppose to some degree, I guess I'm an influencer, right? I guess. I've never considered myself an influencer, but, you know, cute gothic couple works, right? And so I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So I suppose to some degree I could be considered an influencer because, you know, I do TikTok, I do Instagram, I do YouTube. Like I'm consistent, I'm constant, right? I'm always online. I put myself out there, but I'm always a practitioner first, right? All of my content is occult based. So, but I am a practitioner first and an influencer second. I feel like the confusion happens when people are spiritual influencer first and practitioner second. Right? It's about what's the next video that I can make that's going to garner response. And I don't do that. I talk about things that I feel like I need to talk about. And I don't worry about the response that I get from it. Right? I don't actually, like, when I post something, so here, like, one of the things here is, like, I don't look at, like, what I'm saying and how I'm saying it and how that might affect people until after it starts affecting people. And I'm like, why are y'all so upset? Like, I don't get it. Right? You babies. Been great. Curious. You know what? I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think the universe has a sick sense of humor, and I think that the babies of two powerful individuals are just, like, muggle. My personal opinion. It's all right, disciple. It's all right. Good to see you. Good to see you. I was wondering where you're at. I mean, but you got your hi, how are you in like 2 days early. Your comment was the first comment on the live before it was even live. So I don't know, maybe, possibly. But I mean, I do think that the universe has a sixth sense of humor. So maybe, maybe not. Possibly. I don't know. So then you get into like seeing people like gurus selling power they haven't earned. Hey, both Dyra and I are proudly. Oh my God, ADHD. Name. I can't remember now because you said Hufflepuff. That's the only one I can think of now. Oh my God, I really hate ADHD. I really fucking do. Slytherin. There we go. Both Dyra and I are proudly Slytherin. Every single Harry Potter test we take, we're Slytherin. So I guess it just kind of is what it is, right? So self-deification courses that start with calling demons do your inner work is an example of that, right? Or to quote Michael Ford, Luciferianism is a path of self-excellence, not dependence on spirits. Okay? And I think Michael Ford, I've always described Michael Ford as kind of like the modern Anton LaVey. Though I think he's taken a bit of a backseat, which is kind of sad. I'd like to see him, like, I think he's focusing more on his store than he is about, like, you know, his literature. And I've had conversations with that man. He's greatly and wildly intelligent, and I am proud to call myself an acquaintance of his. And I think that I would like to see him, you know, pushing more content out than he does. So the real magicians aren't posting selfies. They're too busy tearing their souls open. Power isn't aesthetic, it's consequence. And that's a point that I've always maintained and I've always stood on. There's nothing wrong with taking a selfie, but that's not what makes you powerful. The work makes you powerful. Right? True gnosis is born from isolation and destruction. This is partly true and shouldn't be a focal point. Right? Rituals is dialogue with the self, not tech support calls to demons. Right? Like I've mentioned this a lot of times. A lot of times when I do ritual, I don't call on anything. So if something comes through, but I don't go into a ritual with the intention of something being called on or worked with during the ritual most of the time. It's whatever comes through. If something comes through during that ritual, then that thing is where it needs to be, apparently. And Crowley's had a warning. Magic demands the annihilation of ego through practice, not praise. Jung's shadow integration. He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. So a modern ritual that focuses on self-communion, no deities invoked, just will, discipline, and reflection is probably the most powerful thing a practitioner can do. That makes sense. I can jive with that. Right? And the cost of real work is sacrifice without audience. The gods you chase live in the architecture of your own skull. Every offering you make to them should bleed from your own effort, not from an Amazon altar kit. So curse of too much is that no one remembers how to be empty. Transformation without, or knowledge without transformation is masturbation. Stop memorizing the names of gods and start remembering your own. I think Sunday, this Sunday, the focus is going to be focused on working with yourself. I feel like that's where I'm going to focus Sunday's episode, is relying on your own power, self-communion, right? Self-ritual, and not needing to call on something, letting something in if it wants to come in, but starting on a blank canvas. One of the things, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I'd like to consider myself a very artistic individual, and I think one of the biggest problems that I have, being somebody that has a full-time job, a pregnant wife, and bills to pay, is I'm never bored. I think I was most creative when I had nothing to do. When I didn't have something to occupy every second of my time or day, I was significantly more creative because ideas just kind of rolled in. And the lack of boredom has made me less creative. And I feel like that same thing, at least for me, applies to ritual. Something feels... No, I mean, I get that. I mean, sometimes, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's times that I'll go into ritual with the intention of calling on something. Like, you know, I will go into a ritual specifically because I want to do a ritual with Lucifer, Baphomet, Lilith, or Samael, or Belial. Like, I will go into rituals with the intention of invoking or evoking, you know, an entity. But many times I don't. I overthink and analyze. Doesn't shut up. It doesn't. Seti, I take a very small amount of time-released meth. That's how I deal with that's how I deal with my ADHD. Which I haven't taken yet, if you guys can't tell. Right? Normally, like, before I start the show, I take it, but then by 2 o'clock, I am wiped the fuck out, so I'm trying to take. Haven't taken. So yeah. So also, I've noticed that apps don't work. I use physical data scanners. It's always on my desk and it's always right in front of me. It's always sitting right here. So that way I always see, because like if you have an app or something, you don't always have an app open and notifications don't do shit for me. Having like the old school physical pad and having things written down and in one spot. Organization, keeping things organized, because having ADHD, I have a tendency of being very untidy. There's a pair of pants draped over the back of my chair right now that shouldn't be there. Just because I took them off and I threw them on the back of my chair and they've been there for 3 days. So I'm very untidy. The organization really helps. Making sure that like everything has a place that it needs to be. And that's its spot. And when I'm not using it or I'm not done with it, it goes back into that spot right after I'm done. Stops me from losing stuff. Wallet and my keys are on some hooks over here. That's their place. That's where they go. My rings and shit go into a catch-all dish that's on banister table that we have. So like when I'm not wearing my ring, take those off and go directly. That. So it's a lot of little things that I do that help with the ADHD. But there's no one perfect system. I've tried so much. And at almost 40 years old, it's gotten to a point where it's starting to depress me. Like my inability to focus. And here's another thing, guys. So I don't get people calling it out. Everything that I write, they are 100% my ideas, right? Like I write out absolutely everything. I research everything. I look up the sources, stuff like that. I look it up. I get the sources. But when I write, because of the ADHD, I mean, I know some people are bang on with writing because of their ADHD. I'm not one of them. So yes, I do use AI to organize my writing. I will write an entire post into ChatGPT, an entire post, and then have ChatGPT organize it. And then I place my sources at the end of it. So I know some people are going to grab my writing and go in and check to see if it's written by AI. It's not written by AI, it's written by me, but AI does organize. So I'm getting that out there. I'm not hiding it. Right? It's like, so if somebody turns around and checks my writing and like, oh, you used AI. Fuck off. Yeah, why? Like, does it matter? It's a tool. It's a tool. I'm not asking AI to write anything for me. I'm asking AI to organize my shit. And it helps. And I'm thankful for that tool. You know, I'm thankful for that tool. So, yes, I write everything myself. I will write an entire post of what I want to get out into ChatGPT. Then I will ask it, organize this. And I like what comes out. It gets, my ideas are there. My thoughts are better put. It stops me from going into swearing rants, like, because I'm the type of person that, right? I have a habit of like, there's so many times that I've written something into ChatGPT and I'm just like, fucking this and fuck that and this fucking piece of fucking shit and fuck. And then when it comes back out, there's not a single fuck in there. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to hide that fact. I think that AI has its place. It is a tool, and it is a tool that I use. If somebody's going to think that that's going to make me less of a whatever, cool, man, whatever. But yeah, anyway, guys, that is going to be it. Y'all are fucking amazing. Thank you all for being here. Seti, again, thank you for the £3. Greatly appreciate it. And glad you stuck around. Glad that our disagreement didn't cause you to unsubscribe or leave permanently and forever. I'm thankful that it was a disagreement and a conversation, and not the creation of enemies. That is what this world needs more of. People that are able to disagree with each other, to have a conversation and move forward from it. Right? I disagree with you on this. This is what I think. On to the next thing. You guys are fucking amazing. Thank you so fucking much. And as always,